Right, so this is a shifter from a Chinese L-TWOO branded group set. And it might not kind of seem like much, but this is, yeah, a pretty big deal and honestly a massive surprise as well. So yeah, let's talk about it. My name, as always, is Luke, and yeah, welcome back to Trace Velo. So it should come as no surprise that some companies, a lot of them are Chinese, have a tendency to, let's say, take some heavy inspiration from the design or features of successful products. I mean, I've shown a few examples on this channel. So this is a 4-piston brake caliper from a brand in the USA called Hope. And this one is quite a similar looking unit that you can pick up on AliExpress from a brand called Z-Race, but it happens everywhere in all different industries. So yeah, here are some examples. This is the Landwind X7 from China, and this is the Land Rover Evoque. This is the Goophone i17 Pro Max, and yeah, this is the equivalent iPhone. This is the Kip Max cordless vacuum, and yeah, this is a Dyson. Weird. Now L-TWOO. They're maybe not quite as blatant as some of those examples I've just shown, and arguably with a group set, specifically the shifter, there's less kind of scope in the design to be different, but let's take a look. So L-TWOO, it's a brand I'm sure many of you are familiar with, but for those that aren't, they're a Chinese group set manufacturer that was founded quite recently in 2016, but they produce some regular mechanical and a lot of electronic group sets, which I've covered as well actually, but because of the value they offer, I've been pretty obsessed with them for, well, the last few years, to be honest with you. However, because on this channel I'm focused on squeezing the most amount of value out of the bike builds I do, I've got a real soft spot for their mechanical or cable actuated group sets. So for example, this R9 disc group set of theirs, I bought it for 120 quid. I've been running it on various bikes for nearly 2 years at this point, and for the value it offers, I absolutely love it. But this is the interesting thing, right? Because up to this point, all of their mechanical group sets have functioned in a similar way to Campagnolo stuff. So this is a slightly older mechanical shifter from L-TWOO. So obviously this is the brake lever here. Behind it, you've got this paddle that you use to downshift, and then to upshift, you've got this thumb trigger right there. So you upshift like that, all very straightforward. And although not identical, in my opinion, specifically this shifter here does look very reminiscent of the shifter from the Campagnolo Chorus group set. They continued this philosophy into their next generation. So on the R9 disc group set that I just mentioned, it's a kind of updated design, but the same operating principle. So you've got the brake lever, behind that you've got the paddle to downshift, and then you upshift with a thumb trigger on the side. I just assumed L-TWOO was going to use this approach for the foreseeable future, but on their latest generation of group sets, I specifically have their gravel-oriented GRT one. They've, well, for some reason, gone in a completely different direction. It looks like they've basically begun to follow the kind of Shimano way of doing things. So using the whole brake lever to downshift, and then you've got a smaller paddle behind it to kind of upshift. I mean, just look at the mechanism underneath. This is the latest generation of L-TWOO shifters. And yeah, this is a kind of similar Shimano one. They look so similar. This change genuinely took me by surprise, right? I mean, from like a legal standpoint, I wonder whether this infringes on any design or patent stuff from Shimano. It could all be completely above board. It's difficult for me to know really, but still, this is something you can go ahead and buy. I bought this myself on AliExpress, but importantly, is it actually any good? Well, let's get it on a bike and find out. Okay, so this thing is really cool. It's the HoverAir X1 Pro Max, and I've been fiddling about with it for the last couple of weeks. It's a super small self-flying drone, including the battery. It weighs less than 200 grams. It folds in half and it'll fit in the back pocket of a cycle jersey, but it'll produce footage like this. The footage you get out of this is so clean. I mean, look at this. I was walking through the woods last week with my daughter and captured this. It looks incredible. Now, I shoot in 4K 60, but it can shoot up to 8K as well, which is nuts. It's self-flying, which basically means you can launch it from the palm of your hand. And then once it's flying, it'll track you so you can just set off. and it'll travel up to 26 miles an hour as well, which is pretty rapid. I've also found it's surprisingly stable in a crosswind. So you can see in this clip, the bush is getting buffeted about because it's pretty blustery, but the footage is still super stable. So yeah, you can set it off and it'll follow you, or you can have it zoom right out, or maybe orbit you at a distance. And then when you're done, it'll come back to you. Just hold your hand out and it will land directly on it. Each battery will give you about 15 minutes of runtime, but you can easily swap in another one and you're good to go. This model has 64 gig of inbuilt storage, but you can slap in an SD card. And it's surprisingly robust as well. So I've kind of knocked this thing about. I've crashed it by accident a couple of times and it's been completely fine. It's honestly really cool. You're going to see footage from this in virtually every episode I do from now on. So yeah, if you want to check it out, I'll put the link in the description. So massive thanks to HoverAir for sponsoring this one. And yeah, let's get back to it. Okay, so behind me is the gravel bike that this Groupset is going to go on, and I've had this thing a couple of years actually, and I really like it. I've customized loads on it actually, so I've got a suspension fork, I've got mountain bike tires actually, so these are the equivalent of 700 by 50s, and they're clear on this frame, which is good. But yeah, the Groupset on it at the moment is the L-TWOO EGR. So this is the electronic gravel Groupset. And again, I've been running this for about 2 years, actually. On the whole, it's been fantastic, although I did have a slight issue with this B-link here on the rear derailleur.
A unicycle? That's really sick. You have brakes too?
I won't go into too much detail, but essentially when the bike fell over, part of that B-link kind of snapped and it rendered the whole rear derailleur inoperable, actually, which wasn't fantastic. Anyway, I fixed it and it's been fine for over a year, but regardless, it's all coming off today, so I'll pull off the Groupset. I will be reusing the brake lines. Not sort of best practice. You should rerun the brake lines with a new Groupset, but I'm gonna try and risk it for a biscuit because it'll just save me a bit of time. And they're both L-TWOO Groupsets, so I'll give that a go. But regardless, let's crack on. So just pulling off shifters and bar tape here, super straightforward. Next, chain off. And yeah, this is a waxed chain. So I recently did a whole video on my process for chain waxing, actually. I took a kind of DIY approach and I had great results. But for whatever reason, some people in the chain waxing community weren't particularly happy with me, really, especially when I was chatting over the drawbacks that I faced. So yeah, maybe check it out yourself and let me know what you reckon. But anyway, wheels off, derailleur off, yeah, good to go. Next up, removing the calipers. And interestingly, the mineral oil that was coming out had sort of lost its color. So the stuff that I use is a vibrant red, but this stuff was coming out almost clear. I mean, maybe the heat from braking had bleached the color out. I mean, I'm sure it's absolutely fine, but I'm not totally sure why this happened. Okay, great. So removing that electronic gravel Groupset was pretty straightforward. Like I said, I've left the brake cables in place to make my life a little bit easier. The last thing to do is to remove this, power signal cable to the rear derailleur. So luckily with L-TWOO electronic Groupsets, the shifters are wireless. So you don't have any Di2 or signal cables coming out of the shifters because there's a button cell battery in here, which links to a receiver in the rear derailleur, so that's how it shifts. So that makes things a little bit more straightforward, but I've still got to remove this, which runs down the chainstay tube, up the seat tube into a battery, which is housed in the seat post. So I'll strip that out and I'll be left with a blank canvas so I can get this mechanical Groupset installed. So removing the seat post and taking the battery out. It was only sort of held in there with a bit of foam packaging, actually. A little bit of a bodge on my part. So yeah, good to see it managed to stay in place. Now, removing the cable was actually a little bit tricky. It was kind of getting hung up inside the frame somewhere, but with a little persuasion, I managed to get it out. And also, I fed a cable liner through in its place in the kind of chainstay, which is going to help me out later. Okay, great, we are all set, and I've run a cable liner through the chainstay tube here to help me with cable routing later on. I'll replace the bar tape because it's a little bit manky, and this frame supports mechanical Groupsets because it's got here a frame stop. So basically, the housing for the derailleurs stops here, and then only the cables themselves run through the frame. But whenever I can, I like to run full-length cable housings through the frame because I just find it makes shifting a little bit better. So I actually drilled out that little aluminium insert to allow me to run the cable housing all the way through. So that's what I've done. Getting it installed should be relatively straightforward because, like I said, I've got the brake hoses left in place. So yeah, let's crack on. So I'm about to get this put on the bike, and I noticed that is where the shift cable enters the shifter there. Seems kind of sensible enough, but I did think when this is all attached up to the bike and you've got the rubber on there nicely because it contours to the shifter really well. When that's attached, if say for example the shift cable snapped and you needed to replace it, it's not going to be particularly easy to access that port unless you kind of pull the rubber all the way back and potentially stretch it to get access there. So I think the way to do that, I won't know until I've got it on the bike, but I think you might need to undo this bolt here, kind of leave it there hanging off the brake hose, and then kind of slide this down to access that. So basically, I think when it's in situ, replacing that gear cable might be a little bit tricky. Okay, great. So both of these shifters are attached on and plumbed in. So they use BH59 standard hoses and fittings for those interested. And I've got to give L-TWOO credit actually, because sometimes on these cheaper Chinese group sets, access here to kind of get everything plumbed in is quite difficult. But you can see they've kind of put a cutout here, so you can get your spanner on there and tighten these up. So that's nice to see. They've made an effort there to make that a little bit easier. And also accessing this bolt which attaches the shifter onto the bar is very straightforward. Sometimes I found, again with cheaper group sets, you're kind of fiddling around with the Allen key trying to locate it and find the bolt in here. But in this one, they've kind of added a little recess and it's on the side here. So basically accessing that bolt and tightening and loosening the shifter, very, very easy. So I've got to give L-TWOO credit for that. Installing these so far has been pretty straightforward.
So getting this shift cable housing installed was pretty easy. You might be able to see me using a magnetic cable routing tool in these clips. These things are mega cheap and come in so useful at times like this. Plus, access generally wasn't too bad. So getting that sound deadening foam in place over the top of the housing, yeah, it was a piece of cake.
Okay, great. We are in a really, really good spot actually. So both shifters are plumbed in, like I said, and I've got the gear cable housing running all the way through the frame, and out the back feels really, really smooth. And if I show you underneath, hopefully you can see that sound deadening foam is run over the top of the gear housing, so it should stop any rattles through the down tube. Also, as I was kind of feeding it through the housing, I coated the gear cable in some of this official Shimano cable grease. This stuff is great, but it's about 30 quid for a little tub. I mean, this is gonna last me a lifetime, but yeah, if you don't have this, you can just coat the cable in a little bit of, 3-in-1 multi-purpose oil. It's especially important when you're running full length cable housings like I am, just helps kind of lubricate things and keep things nice and smooth. So let's get it buttoned up.
A few moments later.
Right then, I got a few bits done off camera for the kind of sake of brevity. All that really amounted to is getting the wheels on, cabling up the rear derailleur here. That was very, very straightforward. I had the rear brake on, but I mounted up the front like so. Got the seat post in, and then all that's left to do is do bar tape and then bleed the brakes. Now, I had a quick play around with the shifting, and yeah, it feels really nice actually, very Shimano-esque, obviously, and it has no problem shifting in this massive cassette as well. So this is a 12-speed 11 to 50, which is the maximum this can take. And yeah, I can confirm it seems to work great. So I need to get this out on the road and test it for real. But for now, let's get the bar tape on. So this AliExpress bar tape is a good horse.
Now, to be honest, I was expecting this bar tape to be, pretty awful. It only cost me about $5 on AliExpress, but legitimately, it's pretty good. Not the squishiest thing in the world, but it went on well and it looks decent. Yeah, I was impressed.
And I've put the good horse finishing tape on there, just to kind of keep things classy. Anyway, next up, it's bleeding the brakes. Right then, syringe on, bleed block in. Let's push a little bit of fluid through. So I'm expecting it to look a little bit blue to start with, because that's the L-TWOO standard mineral oil that will be inside the shifter. And there we go, you can see it's kind of a mix of the two. And then I'm down to that on the syringe. And then normally what I do with the L-TWOO stuff is I just take that and pump, and that pumps the fluid back through, although it seems we've got a bit of an airlock. Right. Let's try a different tactic. Okay, so for whatever reason, the bleed funnel wasn't actually working for me. It was difficult to get the fluid to go back down because you kind of need to push it all back and forth, I found, to get all the bubbles out. So I attached another syringe at this end, exactly the same bleed port, popped a syringe on there, and then I was just forcing mineral oil back and forth between them. I've bled out all the bubbles and it feels nice and solid now. So that's all sorted. I'll get this next one bled here and we'll be good to go. Okay, so after a little bit of faff, admittedly, the brakes have been bled, but look at this. So fresh bleed, that's how far the arm goes back. I can't see a free stroke adjustment system in there to kind of set the distance. I can set the reach, but no free stroke adjustment. I can't see it anyway. So that's where they land. And it's the same with this brake here.
comes nearly all the way back, and this is on a fresh bleed. So maybe it'll get better. Sometimes they do after kind of the first ride, once the reservoir system sorts itself out. As with all of these kind of cheap group sets that I bought from AliExpress, you never get any manuals or anything with it. So I bled it in the way that I saw kind of best fit the system, but I don't know if that was the proper way to bleed it, so who knows. But anyway, it does break and it does work, and the shifting seems pretty decent as well. So I'm gonna get it out and try this thing out. It's quite cute. Lots of tiny little lambs. It's lambing season at the moment. Even though I am extremely masculine, that's cute.
Right then, just got myself a little toasty, a cheese, a chorizo, and a sprinkling of Italian herbs. Mamma mia. Anyway, so this group set, yeah, it's pretty flipping good. The shifting is phenomenal, and bear in mind, this cassette is huge. 11 to 50 is massive, especially for a gravel bike, and yeah, it was flawless. Sometimes derailleurs can grind a little bit and kind of get hung up on the largest sprocket, but not this one. Perfect every time. I mean, considering the design, it should probably come as no surprise. This is the closest to Shimano quality shifting I have ever experienced out of a Chinese group set. I think one of the drawbacks with the previous generations is that compared to swinging the whole brake lever to downshift, they've got this kind of quite short paddle here, right? So you have less leverage, just, you know, because it's a shorter lever. So unless your cable runs are perfect, sometimes using a little lever like this, shifting can feel a little bit stiff in comparison. But here you get the benefit of that extra leverage, and it feels great, smooth, light, predictable, very, very good. Honestly, very Shimano-esque. Now, as it happens, I actually have a bike in the corner here that I need to review in the next few weeks. It's running the Shimano R7120 group set, which fortunately is the kind of closest equivalent to this thing. So yeah, I've not had a chance to kind of fully unpack this bike yet, but yeah, here's the Shimano R7120 shifter, and here's the L-TWOO one, right? So they're not identical, and they've got some key design differences, but stuff like the mechanism underneath is very, very similar looking, and stuff like this plastic shroud under here also exists on the Shimano one. So they're not identical, but yeah, in my opinion, they do share quite a lot of similarities. But anyway, the shifting feels great. Maybe not quite as like refined as full Shimano gear, but so close it's basically negligible and makes no real difference. So very, very good. However, the braking. Don't get me wrong, it feels quite good and it will stop you in a hurry, but that lever travel is quite excessive. I was hoping after riding it, it would have got a bit better, honestly. Right, so after that first ride, the brakes, well, they haven't really improved. So the lever travel is still quite excessive. So it comes back to there, and on this one, comes back to there, right? They still stop you absolutely fine, and the brakes are nice, and you know, you'll stop in a hurry, but that just seems to come back quite a long way. Like I said, I can't find a free stroke adjustment inside here. There might be one, but I don't have a manual, so I can't see. And basically, just to clarify, a free stroke adjustment alters the distance the lever travels before the brake pads contact the rotor. So if it had a free stroke adjustment screw, I could kind of change that distance and make them feel a little bit snappier. It's probably worth saying as well, there's loads of meat left on the pads. So if I can show you back here, can you see that? The pads are basically fresh. There's loads of material left on them, because if the kind of pad wear is really low, sometimes you can get excessive lever travel. I have a feeling it could be a skill issue on the actual brake bleed itself, because yeah, as I've mentioned, I don't have a manual for this, so I might not have been bleeding them properly. So I'm gonna have another stab at bleeding these, see if I can improve that lever travel. So yeah, let's give it a go. So after rebleeding, it hasn't really helped, honestly. So you can see they stop in pretty much the same place. But I did notice two things. Firstly, still couldn't find a free stroke adjustment screw, but I did find this screw here, which is a reach adjustment screw. So you can change the reach on this group set. And secondly, I noticed something to do with the actual brake calipers. So these ones here, these are the calipers that come with it when I bought this group set on AliExpress. So if I show you the actual listing, here it is. So you can see these are the same type of brake calipers, right? But if I go onto the actual L-TWOO website for this kind of new updated version of their group set, you can see the shifter there. And I scroll down, they're different calipers. So they're a slightly different design. So there is a chance that the actual pistons inside those brake calipers are a slightly different diameter to the ones that L-TWOO is kind of supposed to ship them with, meaning that you do need to pull the brake lever a little bit further in order to get them to engage. I can't really test it, but that could be one of the reasons. So yeah, braking is an interesting one. They work well and they are powerful, but that lever travel is excessive. Like I said, it could be to do with the caliper, difficult to know really, but as they stand on this bike now, yeah, they don't feel quite as firm and direct as the equivalent Shimano brakes. However, on the whole, yeah, this group set is wicked. The build quality is really nice, and I especially like the rubber that they use on the hoods. That feels great. It certainly feels like a step up from the previous generation, that's for sure. And it's funny, I always used to compare their older stuff to Shimano gear. Yeah, here we are. But let's cover the cost quickly because this could change things. So as of recording, this is what it'll cost you on AliExpress, and this is in fact the exact seller that I personally used when I bought my set. So for both shifters, rear derailleur and calipers, you're looking at 229 quid, which sounds pretty good. But then I found this. So this is the Shimano equivalent. This is their GRX gravel specific group set, their 1x12. Now you only get the shifters and the calipers, but it's 249, which isn't that much more expensive than this one here. Now, yes, you get the rear derailleur with this one, but it's not all that much cheaper really. And with this, you're gonna get bulletproof Shimano quality as well. Now it's worth pointing out that this seller here is one of the only ones that I could find that's actually selling this version of this group set. So when these kind of flood onto AliExpress, this price probably will come down. But yeah, right now, because you can pick up Shimano stuff for a very similar price, I'm not sure it's worth going down the L-TWOO route currently. But yeah, let me know what you reckon. I'll be interested to hear your thoughts in the comments.
Also, while I'm at it, I may as well throw in the weights of this group set. So both shifters come in at 582 grams. The rear derailleur comes in at 298. And altogether with the brake calipers, it comes to 1154 grams. Now, just for a point of comparison, the equivalent Shimano gear from their GRX gravel group set comes in at about 1,165 grams. So almost identical there, really.
So there we go, L-TWOO making some pretty big design changes right now, and at least from what I can see, pulling quite a lot of stuff from the Shimano playbook as well. Now, hopefully prices will come down soon, and apparently they've got an updated version of their road group set as well, so I'll get hold of that as soon as I can. But yeah, anyway, that's all for now, so let me know what you reckon in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time.